You're in. Everyone can see and hear you now.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello. Welcome.
Welcome to Homeboy.
Welcome to Homeboys.
Welcome to Homeboy.
Silence yourselves and your
yourselves. Yourselves. Yeah.
Place stands for a high degree of reverence for how complex human beings are. That indeed everybody is a whole lot. Around this. You guys make the decision to walk the Coopers. It's the most courageous decision that I ever made. I'm proud of it. For you to come here, you're lighting your neighborhood. You're lighting your body because you chose to come here. Like every day you make a choice to turn our light on. And I thank you guys for giving me the courage to keep my light on. Life is not scripted. Job, gang, prison, death. That's not what defines me. I know what they say, my master's degree from Harvard or nothing. It feels like it. Remember we were on the prison beds and we were behind the walls, behind those doors? Some of us didn't stop dreaming. We dreamed of a life that we wanted when we got out. And we made all these promises to ourselves. And now it's time for us to keep those promises. We chose to believe in completely different. You chose to believe that you can change your life. Your home dog, and this is it. It no matter what time we are, or what size on the background, we all share the same thing. There's an idea that's taking root in the world that there just might be lives out there that matter less than other lives. And Homeboy industry stands against that idea. Everybody's equal. Everybody matters. Everybody counts. We are more than gangsters. We are more than drug addicts. We are more than what the poor barrios and the ghettos told us we are. You're serving the world with your work, with your effort. Remind yourself of what it is you're doing, because you just don't know who's watching, and the words you might say to someone would allow them to turn back the hands of time. I love this place. I love that what it did to my life, and some of the people that I've known from back in the days, and how it restored our lives. Today I learned how to read. Today I learned his life. Today I'm a father to my kid. They call me dad. You gotta start believing. and forgiveness, place of refuge. Invite people to that place today.
Good morning, everyone. We want to thank you. They say, you know, sometimes pictures are louder than words. And although we struggled a little bit with our audio there, we thank you for taking the time to be with us. And we hope that although you may not have heard all the words that were uttered, that some of the things that you saw were who we are at Homeboy. We are a community of tenderness, a community of love, a community that receives, and a community that wants to circle that wants to widen the circle of compassion. And so we just want to thank you for being with us today, for taking time to connect with us during this time in the world, where, you know, we want to really invite all of us to be together, to take a moment to pause and reflect on our work and share how we've navigated through this time. My name is Shirley Torres. I've been with Homeboy Industries, and it's been my life's privilege to walk with the men and women who've walked through these doors for almost 2 decades. This place has changed and transformed my life. Because of the men and women that I've met, I feel that I'm a better human being every single day. I want to just say that some of the words that you may have missed were God's delight, your home dog, courage. I never thought I'd be sober. I'm a father now. We're gems and diamonds. Who am I? What am I? I'm a homeboy. I'm a victor. And so those are the voices and words of trainees, of men and women who have really survived unimaginable childhood experiences. And when you get to see them walk through the door, and when you give them a space to see them, you see that they're miracles, that some of the things that they've survived would be things that we wouldn't have never survived. And it really has been my life's honor to be there and pay attention to the swing of the door in my different capacities at Homeboy. I'm honored to share today with a panel and have a conversation and a rich dialogue with my colleagues here. Our hope today is to really talk about the really key ingredients of our program, how we deliver our mission, and how we've navigated through this time in the world to keep hope alive in this time. The city of Los Angeles has given us has given gang rehabilitation programs, has made them essential places to be open. And so it's allowed us to keep the doors open to men and women that are coming home from different detention facilities at a time when the city, all other programs, all other counties, all other states, they've closed their doors. And so it's really important how our work has been critical during this time. So I just want to talk a little bit about our one-stop shop. So over the last, I would say, 30 years, we really have evolved from a prayer that started 32 years ago at a time that, you know, we experienced so much death, and we really have evolved from a jobs training program to a place and a healing and a therapeutic community. And so today our hope is to talk about that. We are the largest gang rehabilitation program in the country. We have 8,000 folks that walk through our doors every day, seeking a chance and a moment to be seen, to be heard, and to be felt, often for the first time. And they do that, and they're received by a community of other gang members who've transformed their lives, and other staff members who have experienced their own trauma and who've gone through their own life and find their light here at Homeboy. And also to the 150 volunteers who expand the bandwidth of what we could do through our different departments. As I've said, we're a one-stop shop. We have everything that someone can imagine is necessary for the resources that they need. We offer case management, navigation and peer mentorship, workforce development, education and training, mental health, youth services, tattoo removal, And we now have a Homeboy Art Academy that we're starting. I want to make sure that you all know that every single day at Homeboy, I work with giants who are always thinking about what could we do better and how do we do it better. And so approach has evolved as we look at different factors that impact our community. As we have looked at trauma-informed work, we've looked at how do we redefine youth and young adults, and how do we give them a different dose of the love and the services that we offer. And I want to say that what sets us apart from any program across the country is not what we offer in terms of resource, but it's how we receive and see people every single day, how we pay time and attention, and how we navigate that so that we don't it's not just a formula. It's really being authentic and being present and walking with people and meeting them where they are. So today I am humbled to be here with leaders. I'd like to introduce the panel that I'm with. I want to start with Jose Arellano. Jose Arellano currently serves as the co-director of case management and navigation. In 2012, he came through the doors as a trainee, seeking a way to redirect his life after cycling in and out of incarceration since the age of 15. Jose is hope in the flesh. For our community, a real testament that change and transformation is not only possible, but accessible. From the moment Jose walked through our doors, our Homeboy family saw him as kind of with a specialness in him and ability to see the good in others. Jose became part of the Homeboy family, started with employment services, then helping organize a community beyond 9 to 5 with the LOC, and quickly rose to be an organizational leader, helping us shape our program and promote leaders from within. Jose, can you start us off and talk a little bit about sort of what the program looked like 5 months ago, and then we can look at how we have made shifts?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for introducing me, and it just kind of reminds me of my journey, and it warms my heart, and yet it makes my heart so tender, and it never ceases to amaze me. This gathering and to see so many people wanting to do amazing things for their communities, and I'm grateful for everybody that's on here. Um, so 5 months ago, what it was like was, kind of some of the things you saw in that video of a place that is safe and a place that is inviting, uh, especially to those people that haven't really been invited to have a seat at the table, in certain, and even things that are happening in our community. So we offer an 18-month training program, like Shirley was saying, but above everything, we offer a safe space where people can come and be seen for the very first time. As co-director of case management and navigation, one of the number one things that Steve and I hope to create is connecting people so that they can feel safe enough to even begin to ask for some of the resources that we offer. Because like myself, coming out of the system, the culture is not to really talk about the things that we've been through. And growing up in the households we grew up in, we take most of those things to the grave with us until we're able to trust a little bit, until we're able to open up, until we're able to be seen as if being seen for the very first time. And so we want to do is create a space where people can feel safe so that they can say that they don't have groceries at their house, so that they can say that, the community that they're living in is unsafe, or the relationship that they're in is a dangerous relationship. We come from backgrounds that most of our relationships have been unhealthy. And so the number one goal for case management and navigation is to create healthy relationships so that people can begin to articulate some of their needs. And then, just as Shirley was saying, we're blessed and fortunate to have most things under one roof, such as, domestic violence classes, parenting classes, anger management, therapy, art academy, and all these different resources that people can connect to so that they can begin the process of healing. Number one, though, is the space itself is very sacred to the city and the county of Los Angeles. And, that's one of the things above everything that we've been able to offer to that particular population. So when you think about the gang culture and growing up in the hood, you know, there's just so many challenges and barriers, where, you know, either you're living in your hood or you're living in an enemy hood, and even walking to the liquor store is you know, is very unsafe, and it's a mission just to do things like that. So when people come to Homeboys, you got sometimes homies that want to just stay there all day long because of the environment itself, and it's kind of like a breath of fresh air. I remember the first time I walked through the doors and seeing gang members from all different gangs, but then the experience that I received once I entered the building and the sacredness, it's so palpable. Words can't even describe, you know, what it's like just to enter that building. It's like you know, a ton of bricks, a weight lifted off of your shoulders. So 5 months ago, that's what it was like. Very energetic. You know, the energy level was high. People running around upstairs, downstairs. People just there to be seen. You know, sometimes not even there for the resources that we offer, but there just for the good mornings, and for the hellos, and sometimes it's the first place where people actually remember your name. So, you know, that's what it was like 5 months ago. Now, coronavirus came, and we knew as an organization that we had to shift as the county and the city was shifting. So one thing that we didn't want to do is we didn't want to skip a beat. So we got tech savvy, you know, and what we did as a team, Stevie and I, we wanted to put in place where people were still being able to be seen. So we did FaceTime. You know, we had our case managers doing daily reports. We wanted to know that they were going through their caseload and people were being visually seen, and they were on the phone with them. They were asking them what they needed. We had case managers and navigators dropping off food. Whatever type of resources we can plug in from the beginning, we wanted to make sure that our community still felt held, because one of the things that we realized, that when the coronavirus hit, that was like the last thing on the totem pole when it came to concerns for our community. They were going back to neighborhoods where their houses were still getting shot up, where they were in relationships that, you know, were unhealthy, and there was domestic violence at play, where there was, you know, one family of many people, up to 12, 14 people living in a single residence. Um, and just like I said, going to the store to get the essentials was a mission, and was dangerous in some of these communities that they live in. So the coronavirus was like the last concern for some of these individuals. It was, you know, relapses were in full effect. So we wanted to be able to plug in to create relief so that people can understand the seriousness of the coronavirus. And our case managers and navigators did a good job at relating to them, because a lot of them had came from the lifestyle, to be able to articulate the seriousness of the coronavirus so that they can also still be safe, because we know that our population has the least access to health care, you know, to essentials for their household, to financial aid. So we wanted to make sure that we created relief so that they can begin to put their head up above water, so they can see the seriousness of staying safe, while the coronavirus, you know, was taking place. And then we moved into, once we were able to be an essential business, or an essential organization to be able to open back up, we moved into a mode where a structure was put in place immediately. And I really want to give props to Father G, because Father G was the one that was really pushing to say, you know what, we need to open our doors. You know, a lot of the text messages we were receiving, you know, there was just a lot of concerns for our population and our community. And so I want to like thank this whole entire team, because there was so many dynamics that we had to take into account, to really put in place a structure that was going to, one, keep all of us safe as a staff, and also be able to see our population. One more thing I would like to add, um, as an organization, the number one thing has always been a fear of being without, right? Growing up, you know, like being without financially, you know, losing our losing our housing. You know, it's just something that we grew up with, always moving around. So this particular population, not just for our trainees, but some of our staff And so, you know, not just our staff that lived in the neighborhood and grew up in that lifestyle, but just being Homeboy staff in general. One thing I got to commend the organization on is, as an organization, they thought about us as people and made it a point to make sure that all of us remain employed throughout the coronavirus. And because of that one thing that was so impactful for our staff, we were able to show up fully 100% and be there for our community. Because I got to be honest, when everything had happened, I started to think about like what's going to happen like with me and my family and my children, and how am I going to be able to pay my bills, not knowing like that Homeboy Industries was going to, you know, guarantee that we remained employed and we were able to do the great work that we're able to do because we had the support of the organization. So I just want to commend Father G, Tom, the organization, for really supporting our work and supporting us as individuals to create ease so that we were able to show up for the population that we serve. And you know, I'll hand it back to Shirley now so that we can continue to have the dialogue around what we're doing on a day-to-day. And I know Stevie, Maria, Eugene, and Marissa have a lot of great insight on the structure that's in place and what it takes to operate the organization on a daily basis. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Jose, for that. And as you said, I think the three things we offer people are safety, relief, and hope. And I think as an organization, it was important for us to provide that for our team and our staff because it creates a ripple effect. And so we can only take people as far as we are. And so if we're in crisis and we don't have that kind of relief, then that limits the capacity and the ways in which we can show up for people. And so I'm glad you really brought that up. I'm going to pass it over to Steve, who's currently co-director with you, Jose, of Case Management and Navigator. And he walked through the doors of Homeboy Industries as a trainee in 2015 after serving a juvenile life sentence beginning at the age of 17. Steve transformed his life, and I'm going to say ours, impacting every trainee he walked with and committing to holding the door open for the next person and committing to healing and hope and offering that for our community. And so, Steve, tell us a little bit about sort of why it mattered and what are the key sort of ingredients that you had to think about to continue to meet people where they are, given sort of these restrictions where we couldn't show up in the same way anymore. What are things that came up for you as a leader? And also, how did you lead your team into that during these times to allow us to pivot?
Thank you, Shirley. I mean, looking at like COVID is, I mean, it shook up the world. And like, how do we as a community, as a culture of relationships, of connecting, of hugging one another, of meeting each other where we're at, being face to face, to turn around and how are we able to move forward without that? And I think like one of the things early on that Jose touched on is like we were doing FaceTimes and we were doing Zooms, we were checking in, we were doing calls, and what we were finding is that everybody was okay, right? That was a word, like I'm okay, I'm fine, but we knew that they weren't fine because we know our community. And most of the people that we work with coming from incarceration, relationships is huge when we talk about relapse. Finances and relationships are two of the biggest things. And now when we look at that and we say, you know what, how do we know that our trainees are doing good or that they're safe if they're at home? What if they're getting beat? What is going on? What's going on with them? And we're not able to meet them one-on-one, you know, over the phone. What if they're afraid to talk? What if they're afraid to meet up on Zoom? So we had to find a way to be creative. How are we going to be able to bring our community back? And how are we going to be able to bring our community back and allow them to be safe? Because that's the number one thing. And how are we going to start to change the culture where it's no longer this as a hug, but it's this as love? Like, when are those things how are we all going to be able to do this with our masks on? And so what happened is we started bringing everyone together, the leaders first, and we started to talk about it. What can be possible and what can't be possible. And from there, we started to become creative. Okay, well, each case manager will open the doors, and each case manager will have their own office. And they'll sit in their own room, and they'll meet 6 feet with each trainee that as they bring in one by one each day. We'll have a light work crew. We won't have a lot of people. We'll have less than 10 workers that are going to come. And every time somebody leaves the chair, they'll come in and they'll wipe the chairs. Every time they open the door, they'll come in and they'll wipe the doors. And we'll have navigators there to check in on them while they're doing it, and they'll help them one-on-one as they start to do these things. And we start to become creative, said, okay, well, then we can do that. Well, what about the community workers, the people that are right now with COVID-19 going on? There was a lot of inmates that are getting released from incarceration. Well, what happens to them? Okay, well, then we're gonna have our doors open, and we're gonna put 10 chairs in the lobby, and when people come in, as after 10 chairs and they're filled up, everybody else will keep them at a distance outside, mask on, checking temperature, and asking questions, you know, one by one, at a distance. And we'll see the people from the community as well. And if they need a job, we'll help them get a job. If they need resources, we'll help them with their resources. And the number one thing that I feel like that changed the game is consistency. Is we became consistent. And the more and more consistent we became, the more and more people start to come. I heard you're open. I need this. I need that. I just really need help filling out this paperwork. Me and my wife, we're homeless right now. So these are things that we were able to start to do little by little by little, at the same time creating this safety. And then the number one thing, like for us, is like, how do we instill hope into our community with everything going on? And he's the one that just leads the way. All right, well, what are we gonna do? Well, people need to see G. Well, under the circumstances, we have these situations, right? G's in that Father Greg is in that category. What do we do? How do we bring him back? And so we created this thing again, being creative. We say, well, he'll meet with people outside and we'll be under a tent. And I remember when we first said that, we thought it was a joke. You know what about? We'll put misters and fans, but little by little, we realized that that's going to be the norm for now. But we have to do whatever it takes in order for us to get there. And as we continue to go and we continue to grow and we continue to bring our community back, we instill this hope that we're not doing it alone. And you see it because every day you see so many people coming off the trains, coming off the buses, waiting here from 7 in the morning. Even though we're open at 9, people are getting here early because they know our doors are going to be open. And as long as we continue to keep our doors open, people will continue to come because that's what hope looks like. So that's kind of what we're doing right now and how we started.
Thank you, Steve. I think part of the conversations we had as a team, all of us on this panel and with our other colleagues, was this idea of, was it really that trainees didn't understand COVID and the implications of that? Or was it that you know, some people, specifically our population, wasn't safer at home? They didn't have a home, or they were in situations that were not safe, period. And so opening the doors became sort of we saw a little bit of resilience in the first few months, but then we saw a commitment from the organization and from all of you to say, how do we actually better assess this idea that people are reporting on Zoom that they're okay? I'm gonna shift it a little bit over to Marissa, who really helped us in the first few weeks, and it was critical. You know, classrooms are spaces in which we offer safe places for people to unpack and kind of explore their stories, and she has led the way. Marissa is currently the Director of Education for the organization. She leads access to safe learning spaces in collaboration with other departments and partnerships, and offers our trainees community clients personal development, healing, family reunification, and pathways to academics. Under her leadership, which began in 2014, we have seen the highest number of homies graduate from high school diploma, learn how to read, get GEDs, and go on to pursue post-secondary education. She joined the organization in 2010 and has been with us for a decade now. So Marissa, can you tell us a little bit about sort of the essence of the education at Homeboy, the role it plays, and how that's changed and how it was critical to pivot back in March?
Yes, thank you, Shirley. And I just want to say it's an honor to be here on this panel with each of my colleagues whom I've known in a variety of different capacities over the past 10 years. And I appreciate the commitment that each person makes to making Homeboy come alive and have the vision be alive every day and to stick to the mission no matter what. So that's inspiring for me. And now I'm getting emotional. I'm not known to be the most emotional person, but Shirley knows my little soft spots. so I just want to say, you know, just like everybody was saying, Homeboy has, and for any of you who have been to visit us in person, and I know many of you have, you know that Homeboy is a place full of life. It's bustling with energy. It's indescribable. When you try to describe what is Homeboy to people, they can never fully understand until they're here in person. And now that's changed. So how do we replicate that? Prior to COVID, the Educational Services Department had 2 classrooms and a computer lab running every day from 9 to 4, classes here, classes there, using the break room for tutoring, using the group conferencing room, tutoring on the cafe tables. We were spilling out of the space, and there was just so much going on. And we have a staff of 4 in my department, and we have 70 to 80 volunteers who volunteer regularly. We partnership with a lot of community organizations that we've worked with for many years to help provide the services that we provide. So we had all of that going on. And I just remember so clearly on that Friday, March 13th, when it came down that LAUSD was closing, we thought, well, this is it. The trainees' kids are going to be home all day. They obviously can't come to the office with their kids. We knew that major shifts were happening, and each day it was changing. And naively, I sent an email to all of our facilitators and said, okay, so, you know, we're kind of taking a pause right now for 2 weeks. I'll get back to you in 2 weeks once we know a little bit more. And then it just became clear that this was going to go on for a while. So we had to innovate. And so I got with my team and said, you know, what can we do? There's this thing called Zoom. And so we started ramping up our classes on Zoom, and, you know, really working with my team about what's possible and what's feasible. You know, are homies going to get on Zoom? Do they even have devices to do this? Do they have internet and hotspots? Is this going to work? I remember Evan, one of my staff, who is a former trainee and worked his way through to become our Project Fatherhood facilitator and a parenting facilitator. He was like, I don't know. I just don't see, like, our group is so intimate. I can't see the guys wanting to do this. And we just have to try. And that was the first class that we launched. And there were only 5 men on. And the following week, there were 12. And right now, it is the most amazing group. The fathers get so deep. They get so vulnerable. They appreciate having that space. We serve in our department not only the trainees in our program, but a lot of community clients. So it was really important for our team to continue to serve these community clients, because many of their lives are dependent on this in terms of, are they going to be able to see their children again? Are they going to be able to be reunified? Are they going to have to go back to jail, to prison, or to court? We have 52-week domestic violence batterer intervention classes. That's a year that somebody is in this class. And if we delay a month, 2 months, 3 months, that delays their life. So it was very important to our team to figure out, if we can only start with a few, let's start with the classes that our clients are depending on for their lives. And we got those going first. We have an amazing group of volunteer educators who run teach our GED prep program, and they were all on board. They said, let's do this. So still to this day, we have them teaching GED classes, you know, a couple times a week, doing one-on-one tutoring. We've graduated a number of high school diploma clients and GEDs during COVID, which is amazing and an incredible testament to our trainees who are so dedicated and want to still continue progressing in life and investing in themselves during this very challenging time. Another piece that we looked at was, okay, now our trainees are home all day with their kids. The kids aren't in school. How are we going to manage this? So we added a lot of classes that had to do with family activities. We did daily story time. We did a family dance class. We added meditation every day so that anybody could, including our senior staff, community clients, anybody could help try to reduce anxiety. We also started to address, as people were losing family and friends and loved ones during a time when it is not easy to grieve, when you're not allowed to be around others and love one another, love on one another physically. We had a lot of grief and loss that we were dealing with. So we did a few healing circles. We just recently, with the loss of our community member that Father Greg spoke of this morning, that day we had one of our therapists join our class to do a grief and loss circle in that class so that we could start to unpack that. I'd say that there have been a lot of challenges in doing these Zoom classes, as the guys have spoken to. It's, you're technically distant. People say, yeah, I'm okay. But in the classes, actually, I've found that the ones who are logging on are becoming very vulnerable. It's interesting, you see a view into their home lives that you don't see when they're in class. You see their kids around them. You see what kind of living situation they're in. You can see if they're lying down in bed and look depressed, and then we can follow up with that. You can see if somebody's not on video and they have a history of domestic violence. Then we check in with that, like, how come you don't want to be on video? We give a call afterwards and see what's going on. There are a lot of clues. And so while it's not perfect, it's been a way for our community to still connect, especially in the beginning before Homeboy opened its doors again. So many of the trainees were saying, oh my God, it's so amazing to see everybody. Everybody felt so isolated. We all felt so isolated. And having that sense of community was really important. The other thing, Steve spoke to consistency, and that was very important for our department to maintain consistency with classes. I didn't want to just throw up our hands and say, well, we can't do this. We kept on as many of the classes as we could, added some new ones, and we kept them at the same day and time. So it's like, if you're going to anger management at 11 on Tuesdays, you're going to go to anger management at 11 on Tuesdays. If you're doing baby talk at 9 a.m. on Fridays, we're going to still try 9 a.m. on Fridays. We've made a few changes here and there, but I think having the consistency and the structure was really important for everybody because of the possibilities of kind of ending into depression or just not having a regular schedule. And also for them to hold a schedule for their own families and their children was really important. So we've tried to keep all of these elements in mind, and it's not been perfect. There are a lot of trainees who've never signed on to a class, and that's worrisome. And I know that navigators and case managers work with them in different ways, and somebody is holding them. There are issues with connectivity. There's not equity in technology and connectivity, and that was a big issue in Los Angeles with a majority of students in LAUSD, and of course their parents, who are our clients, not having internet, not having hotspots, not having a device to log on to school. So we've tried to support that in any way that we can. We tried to help everybody get connectivity. If they had a child through the LAUSD, it was free. We're using every possible resource that we can to make people feel a part of and connected. And we love seeing each other's faces in a class, in a group. We're trying to speak to the needs as they come up. So like I mentioned, a lot of grieving has happened. We're bringing back grief and loss. We've had our baby talk class, which I have to say last week was, this is a typical Homeboy thing. Two of our trainees had baby a couple weeks ago. They were both on. And then we had two who are expecting. One of them said, her umbilical cord just fell off, and I just want to see if this looks normal. Put the camera up to the baby's belly button, and the pediatric residents who are on there with our, LCSW, Teresa, they're like, yeah, that looks clean and healthy, and it's like, be able to do that. I wanted to take a picture of the baby's belly button. He was grinning, and the mother who was on there with her new baby was just beaming. And we've just tried to create a space for community and for connection and for unpacking trauma and grief, even a socially distanced way. And I love that we're open in bits and pieces here, and so we're able to do a hybrid. And by virtue of our department, we have group classes, and gathering is still not really safe. So we're trying to develop hybrid ways to continue, and we'll keep evolving. And it's exciting, and I love that we haven't let our community down. That's what I love the most. So.
Thank you, Marissa, for sharing. I think it's wonderful to kind of see that, just how our team and how we have, I think, thrived at a time when, we've been challenged. And I remember coming through the doors when I came in, and it was roll up your sleeves and triage. And in some ways we do crisis well. We know how to do it. Grief and loss has been part of the fabric of Homeboy and how we deal with it and continue to hold the arc of life. I remember sort of coming in early on and understanding, oh, this is not a job. This is part of my life purpose. And we're at the crossroads of life and death. And we hold intention sort of how people are experiencing the layered grief and loss during this time, but also there's trainees getting their first apartments. There's trainees receiving their children for the first time and being fathers and being excited about that. I remember a case manager shared how creative, and this is sort of the innovation, it speaks to the commitment of our team, is they were looking up YouTube videos on exercises to do for a class as she got ready to deliver her child. And her case manager was doing it with her, so that she didn't feel alone and she didn't feel abandoned, and so that we continue to show up in this way. And so I want to move a little bit now into sort of this arc of holding adults. You know, in 2019, we really set to fund the fullness of Homeboy and really develop a safe space. Charisma earlier talked about this as a youth in the training panel, about having just a place where youth can be youth for the first time in their lives, and where they could be supported and received by a team of adults who are excited to meet them there in adolescence, which could be a challenging time, especially for the community that we serve, for kids that are already gang members at the age of 12, 13, 14. And so I want to pass it on to and introduce Maria. Maria has been part of the Homeboy family for over a decade, 13 years, and she cultivates community everywhere she goes. Maria is also known to many of us as compañera. She's an organizational leader responsible for structuring case management when she was director of the department for almost 11 years and making it a formal service area. She now is overseen and has been promoted to be the director of our Youth Reentry Center, which really launched during this time. We hope to be LA County's first Youth Reentry Center, and we have a strategy in place that she's responsible for implementing. Maria, can you talk to us a little bit about sort of what are the key elements of what your team is trying to do, not because of, but in spite of all the challenges that we're facing? Oh, we can't hear you, Maria. Volume, I think your volume up.
Can you hear me now if I go closer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'll go closer. All right. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here, excited. This morning when I was getting ready, I thought I was getting ready to go to the endowment and see everyone's faces and meet everyone again that I met in the past couple of years. But unfortunately, we're now in this state of Zoom. And yes, we are somewhat Zoom fatigued, but we have to do what we have to do. Special thanks to my colleagues as well. I think this is the first time I'm with them in a panel, so I'm excited. Our positions have shifted throughout the years, and I'm excited to be with them and sharing this moment with them. It's just hearing my colleagues speak about the last 5 months and what Shirley just mentioned right now in terms of being funded to really be intentional in how we deliver youth services at Homeboy Industries and building a youth reentry center in Boyle Heights during the moment when we had to close our physical space was a challenge, but also rewarding. And I think it was a moment where our Homeboy team, youth team, was about to start at the new space. We had a new case manager, our new navigator, and suddenly we get the news that we have to close our space. And of course, like Steve, Jose, and Marissa said, we had to react to how are we going to provide services now virtually versus every day-to-day operations. So for us, it was, again, we had to do Zoom. And consistency was important. We even had Zoom on our holidays, just because we didn't want to stop Zoom on a holiday and then lose the momentum. And then they would think like, oh, we're not going to do it no more. But we even had Zoom on our holidays. And that was like, one thing I do want to mention is that we've been talking a lot about our how we deliver services, but one thing that and I want to mention is how we've been holding each other as staff too, because it hasn't been easy at all. It hasn't. And just checking with each other, having meetings outside, Zooms, having our own Zoom meetings with our own teams and with our colleagues has been checking our temperature. Like all that has been impactful in how we deliver services, because in order for us to deliver services, we have to be okay. And a lot of us have struggled also with our families, with our children at school. So that's, I want to mention that in the room too, because that's important that we all carry besides the work that we want to deliver in the mission of Homeboys. And so with the youth, we currently right now have a summer youth program. We didn't know we were going to have a summer youth program. This would have been our third year serving 40 students during the summer. And as we all know, during the summer when school is out, usually we see a spike in youth joining a gang, most likely joining a gang, or violence going up. So the team felt that we owe it to the community. The youth have been in lockdown for 3 months now. We didn't know, we were waiting on CDC guidelines. We were waiting on Homeboy's guide because we open in phases. So the Youth Reentry Center wasn't the first to open, and we learned a lot from the headquarters and how they opened. So our first time that we opened was when we opened for the summer youth program. And we continue to serve the same amount, but we had to get very creative in how we served. And we served 40 students in groups of 4, 10 in each group, 50% Zoom and 50% in person. And the reason we went in person is because Steve talked a little bit about how we saw on Zoom, we had a good attendance with the youth. We got to see them live at home. We got to see them waking up. We got to see them fight with their siblings. We got to see them argue with their parents. And that was their journey the first 3 months. And then we started seeing a decline. Second month, we started seeing a decline in attendance on Zoom. Folks were going out, they couldn't take it no more. The youth were probably getting tickets, getting arrested, getting violated by their probation officer. We had 2 cases with violation, but others were detained and were let go. I think in the beginning was a little bit with the COVID kind of in denial, what was going on in the community. There's also with the movement of Black Lives Matter, there was a lot with the youth, a lot of movement, and it had a lot to say as well. Some of them were joining the protests. So that was a journey walking through that process, them sharing how they felt with what's going on, both pandemic and with Black Lives Matter movement, and what all that meant for them in their community. So right now this week is going to be our last week of the summer program, and we're successfully ended. We didn't have any, I would say, we had a lot of challenges, of course, because again, we're 50% Zoom and 50% in person. So with a team of 5, so it was challenging, but beautiful seeing people. We did have, we had better attendance in person, and that's just tells us that people were eager to see us. People were eager to have connection with people. And someone said, I think Steve and Marissa too, is that technology equals I am okay. And in person, when we saw them, equals I'm not okay. And so now that we're finishing up the summer youth program, our goal is to minimize Zoom because it's not working with the youth. And now that they have to go back to school and it's going to be virtually, we want to provide a different space for them than it's not Zoom. And so we're going to have to get creative in terms of like, how do we provide services in person? And that's going to be through smaller groups of probably 5, no more than 5, and then by appointment with their case manager and navigator. But it's been a roller coaster, I would say, both for as a staff member, but also as a mother, a single mother. It's been a roller coaster, but I'm thankful for Homeboys. I'm thankful for the management team who has brought us together since day 1, calling emergency meetings to figure out what we're going to do. As you know, we're getting news about pandemic and how is that going to shift for us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. thank you for really painting the picture of the roller coaster for all of us, but also touching on how it affects us personally, but also how we're driven to continue to show up as part of our life purpose and our, you know, continued healing. I want to shift over and introduce Eugene, who just talking about sort of the alignment that we needed to see. We were hearing people were reporting they were okay, checking in. And once we start to see them in person, we knew they weren't. And we wanted to align that. We wanted how they felt to really be where they were, and that was okay. And Eugene was instrumental as part of the workforce development team, as part of a workforce trainer on the floor with the teams, day to day with the trainees, receiving them and helping to just be that consistent person to walk with them, work with them, and provide safety for all of us. And so Eugene rejoined our family last year. He came through the doors in 2011 after serving 30 years in prison. He is home, and his role is to cultivate home for the homies that come and work with him every single day. Eugene completed our 18-month program. He came in originally as a trainee, and then he left for 5 years to be an employment counselor at a workforce center, and then later a life coach for ARC. And so we're so blessed to have you back as part of the family in your current capacity. Eugene, can you tell us a little bit about your role and kind of what you have seen?
Yes, thank you, and kudos to my colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
I'm honored to be on this panel with all of you. For me, let me start with the trainees, because everything centers for me around the trainees and how I reach them. And it was through, after coming back, after being gone for a while, some of the trainees didn't know me. And I know how things are. To establish trust is not easy, because coming from the background that we all have, we're very guarded. And so I know that I had to be consistent and sometimes persistent, right? And I also know that with our backgrounds, we have a lot of people that have fallen off and not showed up for us. And so therefore we don't trust a lot of people because of those reasons. They'll fall off when things start going bad. And so I knew it was important to maintain communication and let them know that I'm here when you're ready to talk. I can't force you to do anything, but when you feel like talking, we can talk. And how I established that trust and that communication is sometimes by sharing some of my own experiences, because trainees, because as much as society likes to point out our differences, we actually have way more commonalities than differences. And so I always try to point out to them some of my struggles, how life is affecting me. Just because I'm senior staff, I'm older, or whatever the case may be, life is still happening. And so I showed them, I connected to, and just consistency. And so I came into the cafe and the bakery, and I was given all of these trainees to work with, a couple of who I've had known, but others I didn't. And so what I did was, as they were beginning to come into the businesses, I'm gonna take the initiative to reach out to them before they come into these businesses to find out if it's really what they want and find out what their goals are. Because I don't wanna tell you what your future is. I want you to figure it out, but I'll help you along the way. And so sometimes I help them by showing them what other trainees have done, what other individuals like them have done, because traveling down a certain path, they don't want to feel like they're traveling alone. But if they know other trainees and other men and women who are struggling, who have been through their struggle, have made it through successfully, then they're more inclined to follow my direction or the suggestion that we've offered to them. And so it's just through consistency. That's a common thing that I've heard from all of everyone who's spoken on this panel is consistency. And so the consistency in being there for the trainees to let them know that whatever they need, I have, right? And if I don't have it, I will seek it and get it for them. And so just to give you an example, I met this young lady by the name of Angelica. Never had spoken to her before. So when the first time I approached her, I said, hey, I'm Eugene, I'm your new work readiness trainer, and I'm gonna be helping you along the way. She was like, I don't need any help, I got it. And the other trainer that was here before, that was my help. So don't worry about it, I got it. And I was like, okay, but this is how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna text you every Monday while we're on this COVID thing. And every Wednesday, I'm gonna call you and I would like for you to answer the call, because I wanna hear you. I wanna hear you tell me you're okay instead of texting me you're okay, right? So if I can pick up anything in the voice. And so I started texting her and she would text back. And then sometimes I would call and she wouldn't answer, but she would answer later and call me back and say, oh yeah, I was doing this or that. And I was like, okay. So about the fourth week, we were on this about late April. I call her and she says, you know, Eugene, you really do care. She goes, because you and my supervisor, Robert Juarez, are the only two people that have called me, and I barely met you, right? And she said, that says a lot that you're still calling me, even though sometimes I don't take your call. And I said, homegirl, I'm gonna meet you where you're at. When you're ready, I'll be ready, right? And today, me and her have dialogue I have to force the phone to hang up because she wants to share her openness. And so that's what it's about for me, establishing that commonality and that trust, because trust is a big issue for our population. And if you can establish, especially along racial lines, I'm an African-American, a lot of the individuals I serve are Latinos or other races. And so sometimes because of the backgrounds we've been through, prisons and all of that, we've been influenced to not trust people of different races, but after a while, those barriers start coming down. Why? Because they can see that this person is consistent, more so than maybe others, but the consistency is there. And then once they see that consistency, then they're more inclined to listen to some of the suggestions that I have, right? Because this was the same young lady, for example, that said that she never wanted to leave this organization. I'll never interview and go to another job because I don't want to go through all of that. Today, this young lady is saying, you know, I could pretty much find a job anywhere. And I'm like, exactly. Of course you can. Of course you can. And so it's through that consistency and patience, right, is the payoff. And I can see the wheels turning in their head, as we all can, because we all do this work. I can see the wheels turning in their head, and I'm just like, give it time, give it time. Even today, that young lady's colleague says, wow, Eugene, I remember when you first met her. She didn't even want to talk to you. Mm-hmm. The proof is in the pudding. The work is there. If you do it, if you're consistent, right, and you're patient, they'll come around, because again, it's when you're ready. When you're ready, can't nobody force you to change. When you're ready to change, we're here, right? The door is open, and there's different hues everywhere with welcoming arms and smiles to welcome you in here. And that's what the trainees, that's what lasts, that's what they miss. This is what Jose touched on. And now that I'm a part of the maintenance team, now that we have about 10 of the workers coming in for the safety to help keep the place up to speculations that the city is asking us to keep, they feel like they're more a part of the organization. Why? Because they're back and they're helping to keep the place clean and keep Pop's safety, keep Pop's Father G, keep him safe. And so they're running around here, and you can barely get out of your seat or come out of your office with somebody wiping your doorknob down or wiping your seat down. You'll come back, you'll get up for 2 minutes, come back, your seat is wet. Get up 2 minutes later, your seat is wet again. You're like, hang on, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. And so the trainees are committed. Of course, we have our hiccups, but again, it's the consistency and having the dialogue to sit down and tell them what your expectations of them are, right? And yes, sometimes they come up short, but it's meeting them to say, hey, you're coming up short. How can we better fix this, right? And they'll say, well, I'm having some problems with my girl, this and that. Well, let's communicate that. How can we help her? Maybe she needs some help as well, right? And getting them to open up and invite some of their family members who are going through some struggles, right? And now the beauty in this is that now I can get calls on the weekend saying, hey, Eugene, Monday, can I bring my cousin in? He just got out. Bring him in. And so reaching these trainees where they're at it's humbling. It's humbling because I was a trainee, and I want the best for them. I want from my brother what I want for myself. I want from my sister what I have for myself. And so how they interpret that is if you're going to be consistent in what you say and what you do. And so that's what we try to do here as much as possible.
That's right. Thank you, Eugene. It was just beautifully said. I want to move over to ask, and maybe one or two of you guys can talk a little bit about what do you know for sure? Like, what do you know in your heart? Because I hear you guys sort of talking about, and I see you know, Homeboy is a place that when you walked in, people talked about the palpable love.
Yes.
About feeling it. And that's been challenging right now. And when I walk in, even when we greet each other with our hearts, with our mask and smile with our eyes, there's like a gratitude and there is palpable humility. And you as leaders sort of cultivate that in our team and in our trainees. And what have you guys learned or know for sure during this time that matters?
That's for me or for the panel?
For the panel. Jose, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just so many things were mentioned as I was listening to you guys, and I mean, and then you just kind of put it all together with that one word that you said was gratitude. When I came to Homeboys, I never felt like anybody was doing a job to help me. I always felt like they just wanted to genuinely help me. And as a person that grew up in a culture of, if I allow you to do something for me, you're going to expect something from me. I remember coming to Homeboys and I wasn't able at that time to articulate my pain, to even understand what healing meant, to even know what I needed to ask for. I didn't even know what I needed to ask for, let alone have the courage to be able to ask for anything from anybody, because I didn't want none of you guys to know what I had been through. All I wanted was a job. All I wanted was to be able to provide for my family, for my children. But I was given so much more than that without even asking for that. I felt like if I was seen for the very first time. And I think that's a big part of the secret sauce. Is I heard this when I first came to Homeboys a long time ago. A homie told me, he says, you only keep what you have by giving it away. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, I don't have much feria to give away. I don't have much money to give anybody. But he says, everything that you receive, one day you're going to give it all back to somebody else. And I'm hearing that as each one of you has shared, I just hear the gratitude and the purpose that you receive from being able to plug in for people on Zoom, for being able to go like this to somebody as they walk through the doors and not being able to hug them, for the phone calls and the text messages. Even what you said right now, Eugene, when you said, like, it's a gift that you get to talk to people on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
You know how many people, they work Monday through Friday, and when the weekend comes, they don't want to talk about work. They don't want to hear anything about work. This is the only place I've ever been where it doesn't ever feel like it's work. And that's a gift, and that's something that I heard Father G said. He said, if you're tired, then you're doing it wrong, and one of the things that we don't do at Homeboys is we don't tell people to measure up. We don't tell people, hey, you need to change your life. You're headed down the wrong path. I think you need to go to this class and that class. You know what we tell people when they get there? You're important, homie. You matter to me. I love you. I see you. Thanks for showing up today. Thank you for being here. You provide, we provide, and I want to say you guys, because specifically I'm speaking to this team. You guys provide a place where people feel like they belong, and that's, I think, the secret sauce of Homeboy. And that comes from a place of doing it wholeheartedly because you genuinely care. And I think because when a person has been held, then they know how to hold. And so because when I came to Homeboys, I had never been held. So when I was held, now I'm able to hold someone else. And so everything, like you said, Shirley, has a ripple effect, everything that we create internally. And, just all these different things. You guys have said so many amazing things. And you guys light my heart on fire. And I want to get phone calls on the weekends because of everything you guys said. So I think that is one of the major things is we keep what we have by giving it away. Everything we have, we continue to give it back, and we keep it because we continue to give it away. And that doesn't mean money. That means emotional support. That means a shoulder, ear to listen to, eyes to see with. I thank you guys. You guys have really inspired me right now on this panel.
Thank you. Anybody else? What do you know for sure, have learned for sure that Homeboy has taught you or has gotten really clear during this time?
And you know what's and like when you talk about secret sauce or the magic here, like earlier, I was receiving a young lady. She came in for the first time, and today, and she walked in and she sits down, never ever been a Homeboy in her life, and she comes in and she's asking like, well, what do you guys do, and what do you do here, and how, you know, how can you help, and this is what I'm going through. And I looked at her, I said, we got you, homegirl. And you know what's a trip? And she said, you know what? I've never in my life walked in a place and felt like I could just be myself. Like that, she started crying. That is what we do here. We create an environment that everybody feels a part of, that everyone feels safe, and they can be who they truly are. That was only day one. With consistency, relationships, and always just keeping those doors open, people will continue to show up. And that for me is what I know for sure, is that our doors will be open and somebody will always be there, and you will no longer have to walk alone.
Absolutely. It makes me think about a call I received yesterday, and it was just such a blessing. I ended my night with a homie who called me, and we prayed, you know, and he had called me. He was in the hospital, and he just had talked about just Homeboy being his family, and how he had been to the building, and it had been a while because of the pandemic. And he said, I had the most perfectest day, Shirley. He said that like the day before, he had, you know, talked to his case manager, and he named all the people that basically held up the mirror for him, and talked to him about his life, and talked to him about their one thing they just wanted was that he was okay. They wanted him to keep living. They wanted him to live out his purpose, you know. What he didn't know, and it reminded me of what some of you have said, is he didn't know that in that day he saw a case manager, and he saw a navigator, and he saw a mentor, and he saw a therapist and a substance abuse counselor in one visit to Homeboy. He was only coming in to meet with his, you know, case manager. But in that time, he also got to sit at the end with Father Greg. And he said, you know, no one's ever said this to me. No one's ever called me son. And that mattered to him, that someone actually saw him as a son, that saw him as family, for someone that depends on us for that, especially during this time. So I think that that's really is part of the secret sauce, is that there is no agenda, that the only agenda we have is for us to be this sort of holding container where we got you, and we're going to hold you, and we're going to walk with you, but you have to really do the work. It's really your choice, and it's an option. So yeah, I just, I want to thank you all, and I want to a little bit open it up. There's been some questions that have been shared with us, and I want to just ask the panel. The first question is, what makes us, it comes from Cindy from Made for Them, and it's what makes a safe space, and what tangibles do we need to provide in our organizations in order to make our spaces safe? Maria, do you want to talk a little bit about that? So what makes a safe space, and what tangibles do we need to provide organizations to make our spaces safe? You're on mute, Maria.
The kids will always tell me, Maria, you're on mute. That's a great question, because it applies to the Youth Reentry Center, as we're establishing it, and as we're trying to create what the headquarters has. We want to bring it to that space, essential space, and as you guys walk into Bruno, that you guys also feel it at the Youth Reentry Center. So how do you create a safe space for youth? Particularly is meeting them where they're at. And that's a famous phrase that we all have heard at some point during this type of work, meeting where they're at, but also being yourself. And especially with youth is taking the risk to also be a kid yourself. And to also, and even though that might sound kind of silly, like you say space, be yourself, be a kid, it does relate, because when a youth walk into the space and you're able to greet them, regardless if you know their name or not, that you're intentional in receiving them. And that even though you're busy, if you're you know, caught up, that you take that moment to pause and receive them. That the moment that they know that they've been greeted and received, it's already creating a safe space. And with the youth, we've had different youth walk in from different neighborhoods. And even that has been a learning experience too, because we know for youth, compared to adults, most likely with the youth, they haven't really hit rock bottom like an adult, or has gone through many phases in their life like an adult. So they're most likely sometimes still active or still one foot in, one foot out. And so regardless of like what they did yesterday, or that morning or that night, your PO, they know that maybe your PO, their PO called you to tell you what they did, that you're still going to receive them that morning for who they are, and not like say, hey, your PO called me. That's not the first thing you're going to say what they did wrong, but what they did right. And that's coming back to the space. So all those factors are part of creating a safe space. There's a lot of other factors, but in terms of you, those are the things that come up for me. If anybody else would like to add.
I think a lot of it is in relationship. I would say, Shirley, it's and a lot of it has to do with approach and language. It's not when somebody's not showing up. It's not where you at, how are you, you know. It's those little things that make a difference. Well, because when you grow up in a lifestyle of betrayal and violence and judgment and everything is off of image, and then you come to a place that's welcoming and receiving, you right away, I know in my mind, is like, what's your motives, what's your intentions? And then what happens is when you start to be received and you start to talk with someone and you realize there's no judgment, and you realize that all they want is the best for you. And then you start to see that you only want the best for yourself. And then a connection starts to happen. And no matter how many bad relationships you've had in your life, this one good relationship changes everything. It challenges those beliefs that you've experienced. But it all starts with the approach.
Great. Thank you both. The next question is about navigators. There's a few folks from across the country that have asked, what are navigators? And if you could explain a little bit more. I know we touched on them, but if we could talk about navigators.
Navigators, we like to call navigators hope in the flesh. We like, navigators are, if I can see somebody else that has done so. For me, when I came through the doors and I saw people like Hector and Steve and Fabian Devora and Eugene, I thought, man, there's a chance for me then. I seen somebody that had came through the lifestyle, lived the way I lived, and came from certain neighborhoods, like similar neighborhoods to the ones I grew up in, and they had made it to the other side. And a navigator, is a person that can help navigate an individual or a group of people through the 18-month training program, but also through transitioning out of being an active gang member. The parole office, and also understanding, balancing recovery and work and what that's like, and just helping to navigate. And we like to say, like, navigators are the backbone of our program, because it gives the trainees something to look at as far as like where they can be, and the opportunities for them. And a lot of our navigators are now case managers and are moving through the ranks of our organization, like Shirley says, to be organizational leaders. I remember when I became a navigator, it was the privilege of my life. It was an honor to be a navigator and to be able to help people get to the other side of their pain, and to connect people to healing, because there's no cookie cutter way, and going back to Stevie's point about the relationships, is as a navigator, to build that relationship with somebody that comes from the same community you come from, and you're able to help that person identify ways to cope with or ways to heal from the lifestyle that you lived, is one of the greatest honors, of our lives, to be able to connect somebody to a solution, as opposed to how we grew up and homies connecting, each other to, an easy way out or an unhealthy coping mechanism. So as a navigator, to be able to come from that lifestyle, to have navigated yourself, with the help of others, to connect to healing and solution based, to be able to do that for somebody else, goes back to what I was saying earlier about we keep what we have by giving it away, and it's really, really an honor to have been a navigator and to now oversee the navigators in that whole process.
Thank you. I think a lot of Eugene, go ahead.
So let's say that I think the navigators are the most important component here. Why? Because they're with the trainees at least 3 days a week, up close and personal for hours. And so it's in those times where you can establish trust, communication, right? It's in those times where you can get the trainee more isolated one-on-one, where they'll be more comfortable speaking freely. And so that's why, to me, navigators are very, very integral part of everything we do, because to me, they're, in a lot of instances, they see case managers when they're called in, but for the most part, they're with a navigator daily throughout. And so that relationship is monumental, because you can be the gateway to this person understanding exactly their role here and what their goals are, and establishing goals and believing in goals. You can get them to, if they didn't have a belief system, you can work with them to help them start establishing a belief system. And so that's why the navigators, to me, are very integral here in what we do. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Eugene.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene.
I think about sort of everyone holding a piece, and I think about navigators really modeling. And you know, we talk about Homeboy. There's no other place in the world where more gang members openly talk about their relationship with their therapists and how they seek help. And to me, I think navigators have really been the connective tissue, especially to redefine what mental health can be, what talking to people could be, what taking off your mask can be. And so in many ways, everyone here holds a piece, and we have this secure base where a navigator, case manager, therapist work together to hold and walk the trainee through their journey in our program. And that's really magical. We talk about the magic of secure base, and that's a whole nother panel, I think. So next question is from Ellie and Chelsea in Oceanside in LA, and they want to know, how do you do your healing circle?
So I'll take that. Homeboy has a deep history of healing circles in person. It's the connective thread through everything. It's a part of every service that we provide. It's a very different experience to do it during COVID. And yet it's needed almost more in some ways because of the isolation people are feeling and the desperation and the intense loss that so many people have experienced. So how we've done it a few times is virtually on Zoom. We've done a healing circle on Zoom. There's also been a couple that have taken place in a large space in person that were specifically around racial justice issues and stuff that was coming up for people during the protests, the height of the protests. And we felt it was important to really sort of address feelings of racial injustice and make sure people were being seen and heard and what was coming up. So those were happening in person. The ones, I remember our first one was, you know, when it was full lockdown, Homeboy wasn't even open for the modified, in the modified way that we are now. And it was, you know, it was just virtual. And I can't say it was the same. It was our best, most valiant attempt at offering a space, a therapeutic space for everybody to be together and to connect and share about the loss and know that they were not alone, even though physically it may have felt that way. But it wasn't, you know, we've tried, and I can't say it's been easy, but it's something. And specifically last week when we did it, it was really necessary when we lost a member of our community. And what happened in that space was not only were people in that space who knew her, but there were people who didn't know her because they were newer and it's been gone for a few years. She moved on. And there was other stuff coming for them. It was triggering other loss for them and other feelings of their past life experiences. And so we know that this is an ongoing need, and I'm not sure how we'll continue to address it in the future, but it was a space that we could offer, and it's been ongoing space that we could offer with ritual and with ceremony as needed and in ways that we can do it. So I'm sure we'll find additional ways in person moving forward.
Thank you, Marissa. Anybody else? Okay. I just wanted to add that one of my first experiences at Homeboy back in, in the day in our old headquarters, we had no formal services. Everyone was sort of a little bit like the morning meeting all damn day. And we connected, we broke bread together. But one of the things we started to do is I was introduced to Healing Circle, and it was when I became a mother. I remember being welcomed, and I was given a feather, and I was blessed as part of the community and as being part of a community um, that needs medicine and offers medicine, and cultivates the medicine in each and every one of us. And so it's been part of the tradition of Homeboy, and it's evolved through the years. I remember having Healing Circle when someone was ready to turn themselves in and do the right thing, and we would pray together and come together. There was times when people, we, as part of their coming to Homeboy, we welcomed them through a Healing Circle, and that became a practice of how we really honored that someone had chosen life in facing death. And I remember we would honor them in the circle. And it's changed over time as we've evolved and grown, and especially during this time, as you said. But Maria has done many with us, offering songs. And again, it's what you bring, but also what you need from that space. We're going to go to another question, and this is more about self-care, and it is coming from, it's really about, can someone talk about just self-care, especially as you navigate sort of the intensity of the role that you have, and kind of COVID, political unrest, and racial injustice. So I think navigating this time, the question really is alluding to how do you practice self-care? What's sustaining you? How do you navigate some of the things Maria sort of brought up earlier in your roles? Many of you are not just leaders here, but are also providers and have young children at home or caring for parents. How do you take care of yourself?
Um, well,
Right.
like the word you were using was a practice,
Mhm.
Shirley, right? Like
Mhm.
I've learned that developing certain practices and maintaining these practices they've helped to keep me grounded no matter what's going on. And I think really begin to learn about practices from Robert Waters.
Mhm.
I remember one time he shared with me, because he's a father of seven and I'm a father of five. And still, when I was still living, in a neighborhood that was, heavily gang impacted, and we had a little apartment and we all lived in that apartment. Well, Robert Waters told me, he said, take the principles that you learn here and take them home with you and watch the magic really begin to happen. And I started to do that. And I started to read books to my children. And I started to, all the things that we were doing with our community and our trainees, like seeing them and honoring them and encouraging them, taking that home with me became a practice. And then I took other things home with me as a practice, and that was meditation. And having a practice in the morning for me is something that keeps me grounded, that I know that return to the prayer, that no matter what's going on, return to the prayer. You guys spoke of ceremony earlier, and a
Mhm.
practice of mine was, sweat lodge ceremony. And in sweat lodge ceremony, like no matter how hot it got, it was like always return to the prayer. And we see a lot of things happen within our community, and there's a lot of things that happen in society. There's a lot of injustices, and there's a lot of things that we have no control over. And for me, it's always return to that prayer. Stay grounded in that prayer. Stay grounded in seeing people, not taking things personally. A lot of things don't go the way we want them to go. And the four agreements was something I learned at Homeboys, and taking that home into my personal life, and not taking things personally. Honoring my word and returning to my prayer when things are getting hectic. And so for me, it's been meditation. A lot of those principles that that we share with one another at Homeboys, taking that home with me has kept me grounded. But it's a practice nonetheless. It's not something that I've perfected, but it's something that I got to return to that practice when life starts getting hectic. Get back to meditation. Just wake up in the morning, settle, stay grounded. No matter what's happening around me, stay grounded. stay present. Those are some practices that I try to remain consistent with. And another word you guys all use was consistency. So trying to stay consistent to practices that keep me grounded, or something that helps me personally.
I would say for me, you know, what was a trip is like when we didn't have Homeboy and when the doors, you know, we were doing Zooms and we were connecting, but the doors weren't open. We were doing Homeboy. That was one of the most stressful times, I would say. Um, Not being able to come because Homeboy is not just for the trainers, it's for all of us. It helps return us back to ourselves and what's most important. And I found that as soon as the doors were open and I was able to come back, you know, what I would consider home, it returned me back to myself. What I was leaning on at home a lot and with everything going on and you know, having the kids and wondering what's going to happen with work and then, you know, the injustice, I relied on what I've always relied on, which was exercise, you know, and trying to stay in the moment with the kids and trying to set up a schedule and trying to follow that schedule throughout the day. Those are things that I relied on a lot, you know, and you know, in time has continued to go forward, you know, with prayer. But for me, it was a physical thing. I really needed to get outside, whether it was just to walk. I really needed those things to stay in the moment. But I did find myself as soon as I came back to Homeboy and giving of myself, it returned me back to myself.
Any others?
For me, it's been a combination of what Steve and Jose shared, but mostly it's been prayer. There's an elder that reminds us of pray, believe, and be yourself. And I think being true to the feeling that you're feeling at the moment and naming it. I've learned that through this process since we close our physical spaces, naming it, naming the emotion, whether it's, you know, fear, whether it's sad, whether it's anger, that you're naming it and it's real. And then having the other person to connect to is really important. And I think I had that within my coworkers and even with my family. It took me to another level to connect with my family too as well. Connecting with my son, connecting with my team in a different space, and it wasn't work. We became, to some degree, texting has been like, you know, overwhelming too, but you know, even with the team sharing each other's weekend pictures and seeing each other in a different light, but also seeing my work as my life purpose and not as a job. And the minute that I see it as a job, then it's going to drain me. But it's part of my life purpose, and so that keeps me going.
And how have you walked with your teams? Like, I think part of the question was staff, how we provide during this time, like how do we provide self-care as an organization to our teams and staff? Marissa, you want to talk a little bit?
I think Eugene wanted to say something really quickly. Did you, Eugene?
Eugene?
Pertaining to the previous, you're good.
I was just touching in my self-care, but go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I know that Eugene and I are both avid meditators as well, and I see him a lot in the meditation, so that may be one of the things he was going to talk about. What has been important for me during this time for our team is the consistency is huge, so that you don't feel untethered and unmoored, you know. It really helps rein in that sense of chaos that was in the beginning. But just to support my team and realize, you know, we're all human. We have a lot of pressure. We had a lot of pressure in that first month or two to try to figure out what are we doing? How can we make this happen? How can we felt responsible for bringing people together in community, you know, for our classes. But just knowing that we're all human and we all have pressures, and that's okay. Our team laughs a lot. We enjoy each other a lot. Sometimes we don't enjoy one another for a moment, and that's fine. And just knowing that we all are doing our best, and we all love Homeboy and want to do the best for our community. And it's always about that. And then sometimes we need space for ourselves, and either that's going for a walk or taking a few hours off or meditating or whatnot. And sometimes it's connecting and spending time with each other. So.
Yeah, I just want to add that I think Homeboy is a place that challenges everything you say you're about. And when you're off and you're not taking care of yourself, it shows up. And the homies will check you, or your colleagues will check you. And I think, Maria, you talked about this week. When you cultivate a community where you're holding up the mirror, you will find it's mutual. And that's part of the secret sauce, is that people will hold up the mirror for you and they will see and they will say, it's time, something's off, what's going on? And we walk with each other and we meet each other where we are and we try to be flexible. Um, Homeboy doesn't have a lot of strict rules. Again, we care and we try to meet people where they are with high expectations always, of course. But because we know that what we do matters. It matters to us and it matters to every single person that walks through the doors. And so I think part of it is flexibility. It's part of understanding that there's mitigating factors and how things are impacted, but that also that we're blessed, that we have a team of staff and members that are loyal in a way that is extraordinary, really. And so I think that Homeboy is a place where what we offer the men and women, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, we need to practice to ourselves. And I think for me, that's become my practice, is how are the things that I'm offering everyone every day, am I offering myself and being kind to myself? Um, and I think leading in that way. So I just want to really take time to, man, just thank everyone for this fruitful conversation, for the nuggets. When I hear all of you speak, it's like you're spitting gold. And sort of, I thank all of you for shaping me as a leader, because I really have grown, I think especially over the last year and especially over the last 5 months, and, connecting with all of you in different ways. I love what Maria said, pray, believe, and be yourself. It's what we ask of people that walk through our doors, and why wouldn't we show up and do the same for ourselves, and continue doing your work? I think all of us are at the epicenter of healing, and that's where we feel the most, and we experience and witness pure transformation, but we also are closer to where we experience loss and we experience heartbreak. But that's what we show up for. The men and women and the staff that make up Homeboy are hope dealers, and you lead those teams with honor, with double honor, raising the homies. And I think we get innovative and creative, because I think we're relentless in our approach and trying to do it better every single day. And sometimes we fail, and I think that's okay. But we're at the drawing board. We don't have certain things and practices that were part of our culture, like morning meeting, but we're at the drawing board, we're trying. And I think that's what matters, that we, as Marissa said, that we don't stop, that we're consistent, that we don't only reach, but we're reached by the men and women we serve. And that this is part of our work, our life's work. So I want to thank everyone who took time to join us today and be with us and ask the great questions that you asked. We hope that we can continue to share, and that also hear from you and what's working for you in your part of town or part of the world. And we just want to invite you to widen that circle of compassion and be the light, be the diamond. As the homies say, we're all like diamonds with just a little bit of dust. And so together we will continue cultivating and receiving people for the moments that we have together. Thank you all to our panelists for being with us and for being who you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.